Let's see you cry for more bread, bro. Cry for more bread, and I'm going to put your fucking ass in squats. Those are the words of this defendant 4 days before his son died of starvation. 4 days before he died of starvation. I want to talk about Benjamin Cervera for a second. He's the defendant's son. His birthday's September 28th of 2016. So at the time of his death, he was just a little shy of a month before his 5th birthday. At the time that he died, this child was 28 pounds. So let's think about what that means. That this child, while this man is telling him, ask for more bread, bro, or I'm going to put your fucking ass in squats, is dying already. And his response is, that. So, what this case starts off with is a good Samaritan, essentially, which is Julia Center, and you're going to hear her testify as to she was in town. She doesn't live in town, but she was in town for one of her son's doctor's appointments, and she gets flagged down by the defendant's girlfriend, who she lived with at the time, and that she sees Benjamin, and he's just wearing a diaper, and his body's already limp, and that when she sees him, she just doesn't. It doesn't even click to her that this child is almost 5 years old, because she has a young child in her car with her at the same time too. She sees that Miranda is, which is the defendant's girlfriend. She's on the phone. She's not on the phone with 911. And that she's actually the first person who calls 911. And at the time, when Miranda puts Benji in the car, she actually touches his chest to make sure that at that point, this child is actually still breathing. So from there, you're going to see the law enforcement investigation. You're going to hear from several law enforcement officers who saw Benji at the hospital. They saw the defendant and his girlfriend at the hospital. And they also went back to the scene, the apartment where this child was starved for the last 10 months. And what you are going to see is a barrier upon barrier upon barrier to prevent this child from getting food. There's not only a gate at the door, but in the kitchen, there are locks on the cabinets where the food is, and there's a lock on the refrigerator. You're going to see evidence that there was actually cameras in the kitchen which captured some of these things. There's actually also a camera in this child's room that captured his nights where day in and day out, he's begging for food, while Mr. Cervera, the defendant, does absolutely nothing. What you're going to see is also that at some point, the law enforcement gets Miranda Casarez, which is again the defendant's girlfriend's phone. And in that phone, they do an extraction, and we get a lot of evidence on this case. Evidence which I anticipate you'll see. Number one is that video I talked about at the beginning, where Benjamin, looking like what I can't describe other than, to me, is a concentration camp survivor, eating bread and then begging and then complaining about him eating bread. You're also going to see, I anticipate seeing a video of him standing in the apartment, shivering, and saying, Dad, can I have some bread? You're also going to be able to see photographs throughout this period of time where Benjamin, you can see him wasting away day by day. You can see the photo from the beginning to the end, and this child is clearly wasting away. Now, I also anticipate in this trial, you're going to find out that the San Antonio Police Department actually was called to this apartment less than a month before this child died. And to put it frankly, at that time, the San Antonio Police Department, they messed up. And they didn't remove this child from his situation. They're going to explain to you, the officer will explain to you why he missed what he missed. Why he missed that this child was away. You'll see videos of him. When you'll see him when EMS is checking him out, you can see on his back in between his ribs. finally, but additionally, I anticipate you'll hear from some lay witnesses who Benji had, had control, had taken care of Benji prior to him becoming into the defendant's custody. Those are to include the defendant's own sister, as well as Benji's maternal aunt. And both of them will talk to you about how Benji, he could eat, no problem eating. He had no problem gaining weight. And then lastly, you're going to hear from, I anticipate, two state's experts. The first one is Dr. Kimberly Molina, who is the Bexar County Chief Medical Examiner. And she's going to talk to you about the course and length of her investigation and the steps that she took to get to the right result for what happened, what was the cause of death. Because she's not going to make a rash decision. She's going to look at all of the evidence and give you her ultimate opinion, and that is that Benji was starved to death. She's going to tell you that he had no belly fat. That includes the fat underneath his skin, and that the fat around his internal organs, the mesentery, which should have fat in it, was clear. It was translucent. She's going to provide to you a number of other things that she looked at when ultimately she reached the decision. Most importantly, she's going to talk about the voluminous medical records that she looked at as it relates to Benji, and to show that Benji, for the majority of his life, with the exception of the last 10 months of his life, had no problem gaining weight, that he was following his growth curve, that he was going even into the next growth curve. It's just that last 10 months of his life that he didn't, where he actually fell off the growth curve. You also hear from Dr. James Luper, who is just retired, but he was the former director for the Center for Miracles. He is a board-certified child abuse pediatrician. He was actually in the first group of people to ever be board-certified in child abuse pediatrics. He's actually published on starvation. And he did that same review that Dr. Molina did. He looked at all of the medical records. He looked at the autopsy. And what he will tell you is that this child, at the time of his death, was suffering from starvation. The evidence in this case is going to be overwhelmingly clear. It's only going to lead you to one decision. And that decision is that this defendant is guilty of starving his 4-year-old to death. At the end of this trial, the state's going to ask that you find the defendant guilty. Thank you.
Ms. Rose, would you like to make an opening statement?
Yes, Your Honor, if you could just give